Oh my goodness. Thank you. And I'm Ryan Hunt. Welcome to Veteran Social. And today we have an amazing individual that I actually got to meet while we were down at Oklahoma State University with the Veteran Entrepreneur Program. And we spent 7 days down there learning and refining our entrepreneurship abilities, our superpowers, and also getting to network with some amazing human beings at Oklahoma State University and also the veterans that attended the program down there. So without further ado, I want to bring Patrick Weinert up. I'm not going to steal all his thunder, but I will say he is a retired Army officer. I'm sorry, not Army. I'm a retired Army officer, but he is a retired Marine officer. I think I had a crayon, and that's what got me off-centered there. Little humor. Bad humor, but he's going to be coming on. He's going to be talking about money issues, which are really important. He's going to go much more into it. I'm being a little ambiguous with it, but without further ado, let me bring him up. But before I do that, make sure you register for the Veteran Social 2026, which is coming to you virtually everywhere there is internet, which is pretty much everywhere nowadays. And that is 9 and 10 September. And you can go to www.veteransocial.org. Check us out there. And let's bring on Patrick. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us. And excited to see you. And I'm gonna get off stage so that you can do what you got to do. So take
Ryan,
care.
It's good to see you. Yeah.
Good to see you.
Thanks for the intro too, as far as a little Army Marine Corps sibling rivalry. It's always good to have.
Of course. That's how we do it here.
So what I'll do is I'm going to start out by saying it's a pleasure to be here. I don't know any of you in this group, I don't think, aside from Ryan, but I do hope that over the course of this seminar, we can build the beginnings of a relationship where I can help you with your personal finances as it relates to you and your family, either if you're in the service right now or you're out now and you're transitioning or you've been out for a while. This is a personal finance masterclass for individuals who have been, connected with the military in some way. Could be spouses too. But what it is it's designed really to help you where you're at. But I also want to say that this isn't in any way personalized financial advice for you. If there is a way through StreamYard here that we'll be able to, ask questions or answer questions, I can give you answers to particular questions, but this is general education and is not designed to be personal financial advice. So the first thing I have to say, I always have to put a disclaimer in the beginning here, and that is that the views in this presentation are my views, and even though I'm going to make reference to some of my experience in the military, this does not necessarily reflect the views of the Marine Corps, Department of Defense, or its components. The other thing too is that I am, and our business is, a licensed registered investment advisor in the District of Columbia. However, that doesn't mean that Washington, D.C., the government says that you should listen to me or that they're endorsing me in any way. It is just a legal throughput, if you will. It's a legal protocol that I have to meet in order to do a business, which we do at the Money Mission, provide a business or provide a service of helping people with their financial goals. So again, no part of this is in any way a reflection of any other institution aside from the Money Mission and my own personal opinion. So what we're going to talk about today is a general overview. We're going to talk about the fundamentals of good finances, that first and foremost. We're also going to touch on a few other topics related to finances to include goal setting, how to develop and manage a good budget, without it being a massively consumptive part of your day, right? This isn't designed to create more work for you. It's designed to actually reduce your workload, to reduce your stress, to give you clarity, and then also to give you a plan, right? So we're also, on top of the budget, going to talk a little bit about debt reduction and building good credit. Contrary to popular belief, you don't have to have a lot of debt in order to build good credit. There's ways to do that, which we will talk about. And then we're also going to finish up with a saving and investing plan. And, one of the important parts when it comes to saving and investing plan is not just making sure that you have money to save, but making sure that you also are living a life that you're enjoying and is fulfilling to you, right? We're not trying to neck down your expenses so much that you're living this austere Spartan life that is, unpalatable to most. It's a design, right? It's something that we're approaching with intentionality, where we're going to create a plan for you so that it can reduce your stress and your anxiety when it comes to money and for personal finances. So I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps. I did serve 20 years in the service. And my primary MOS, I was actually a helicopter pilot. And I served in the Middle East and the Western Pacific over the course of that career, doing 6 deployments. And then my twilight tour ended up being a position where they asked me to shepherd a process, and maybe some of you in the audience are familiar with this, which is known as the POM process, right? It's kind of the future ops of budgeting. It's developing a long-term budget for the service and guiding the decision makers through that process, right? Decision makers obviously were generals, but as a lieutenant colonel, I was asked to kind of shepherd a budgeting process for the Marine Corps that would give it a projection in the future. What I wanted to do was take the skills really that I learned managing a large organizational budget, and then also a lot of the time that I spent helping service members that either worked with or for me, I wanted to take that and use those lessons learned to help other veterans in a way that was impactful. And that's really what the focus of the Money Mission is. So the fundamentals, this is probably I would say the most important part of this discussion. And that is, we're talking about what are the fundamentals of good personal finance. And I'm going to take each one of these. We'll spend a good bit on this slide, even though not a lot is written on it. I want to talk about this in detail because it's very important. The first fundamental and the most important in personal finance is income security. Why is income security the most important? It's because if you don't have an income, then it's going to be hard to really do anything else. It's the first, but it's also the fuel that is going to power your personal finance engine, if you will. So if we're able to make more money, that is going to propel us to a better place as far as reaching our financial goals. Now, our financial goals are ones that we set for ourselves that are not just, in the distant future. They're, more relatable goals that are sooner too, right? We have intermediate goals that we're trying to achieve. And our income security is the most important pillar in achieving that. When we say income security, this isn't just necessarily a W-2 job, right? So it isn't necessarily if you're active duty military, you're pay in the military, or if you're retired, you are pay from your private employer, but it can come from a variety of sources. And having a diversified source of income will contribute to your income security. And some examples are owning a business. I know that may sound intimidating, but owning a business is not as difficult as it sounds. And there are ways that you can own a business without it being a huge amount of time, a huge drain on your time. Also, without it, costing you a ton of money, right? It's not a requirement that you have a lot of money up front, especially if you're a veteran, because there are a lot of benefits you can tap into as a veteran. But ensuring that you have income that is secure is important, and having diversified streams of income can help you with that. We can talk about that in more detail later, but income security is number one. The second is disciplined budgeting. And by this, we're talking about not necessarily that you're, leading a life of austerity, but that you are spending your money intentionally. You are not spending it carelessly. And so disciplined budgeting comes in with, when I was in the service, they used a term called zero-based budgeting. And what that was is that every dollar in the budget was accounted for, whatever it was being used for. There was no excess money just floating around. And so since everything was accounted for, you knew what mission, if you will, every dollar had. And when you do that with your own budget, it's beneficial for you because you can say, hey, I am going to save a certain amount. I am going to spend a certain amount, or I'm, allocating a certain amount for housing, allocating a certain amount for food, allocating a certain amount for recreation. When you do that, you get a lot more clarity on where you're spending your money, right? So not only is it just assigning, money to a certain task, but it's also understanding where you're spending your money, because the vast majority of people don't keep a budget. And getting an idea of where you are with your budget is the first step in identifying a good disciplined budget, is what I refer to it as. The third pillar is what we refer to as dollar cost averaging, right? Well, you'll hear a lot of maybe financial influencers use that term, and it's kind of a fancy way of saying regular saving and investing, right? And what that is getting yourself to a point where you're paying yourself first. That means that you are making your saving a priority. In essence, it is an attempt to try to force you through routine, right, and through structure to live within your means. And that is making sure that when you're living within your means, that the money that you're able to save goes to the savings first. It doesn't stay in your account. When I was in the service, another story, very short story, is that when I would have service members who got a raise, frequently I would encourage them to have that amount, that raised amount, automatically go into their TSP. Who here knows what TSP is? Obviously, some of you may not, but the thrift savings plan, obviously, is the military's retirement plan, right? Their equivalent of a 401k. But I would encourage those who got a raise to have that money go automatically into their TSP, right? So it's like they didn't even see the raise, but they're still living within the amount that they had budgeted for themselves. Now, I know that in this day and age with rising cost of living, that can be hard to do. And those pay raises sometimes are a relief, right? But what we can do, again, with disciplined budgeting is find the low-hanging fruit where we can find savings and continue to live within our means within that dollar amount for as long as possible. So those raises automatically go in to either a retirement account or another type of savings account to save either for your retirement, for your future goals, or for a rainy day. And it's something you don't even have to think about, right, in its allotment. So much of what we do is not necessarily motivation, right? When I was in the service, we always talked about, hey, how motivated are you? And don't get me wrong, motivation is important, but long-term success is derived more from the structure and the habits that you have more than how you feel, right? Because feelings are fleeting, they're temporary. And, if you're able to sustain yourself in a state of motivation for an extended period, good for you. Most people aren't really capable of doing that. And so since they're not, really what's more important are the habits that you have set in place, the structure that you have set in place. So if you have money that's automatically going into your savings account, you don't even have to think about it. That's going to be executing your plan, and you really aren't having to do anything about it. So even if you don't feel good, even if you're not that motivated, you're still executing the plan, which is the most important part, right, is the execution. The fourth is diversification, right? This is, we are going to invest your money. When I say we, I'm referring to you. You are going to invest your money in a way that enables you to achieve your goals with the minimum amount of risk. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to take risk. Everybody has their own, what we call risk tolerance. Are you willing to put your money in something riskier where the payoff is potentially higher? Or are you more risk averse and you want to put your money into an investment vehicle? It could be something like a CD or even a savings account where hey, it's not going to grow as quickly, but the money is safe. It's, not going to lose value, and it's going to be a place that I can get access to it very easily. So balancing out that risk tolerance, identifying what your goal is, and then crafting a plan to invest so that we hit it with the minimum amount of risk. You may actually take a lot of risk doing it, but you're going to do it at the minimum amount necessary to reach the goal, right? That maximizes our chances of reaching the goal. An example might be, hey, if you want to buy a house at the end of the year and you have enough money, you figure you have enough money, you could save it. Well, you just put it in a savings account, right? Putting it in the stock market may actually do better for you, but there's a lot more risk involved than what's necessary in order to achieve that goal. The fifth, although I'm not going to say it's the least important, it's certainly not the least important. It is probably equally important to some of these others, is personal emotional stability. When we hear about events going on abroad, geopolitical events. There's fear in the market. Earnings came out, they aren't as good. The Federal Reserve's raising interest rates. There's news. There's all sorts of events taking place external. You can see the market go through a lot of perturbations, and you can see it go through a lot of angst too, and an emotional roller coaster. Now, for those of you, who have been investing for a while, you remember that the 2008 financial crisis was pretty severe. And at that time, it's so important to know, at that time, it was so important to know that buying more investments, right? Investing more is really the way you wanted to go. You didn't want to sell. Who do you think is your biggest enemy when it comes to, the market? Who's your biggest enemy? Is it geopolitical events? Is it, crooked company specialists or leaders cooking the books? Is it, dishonest salespeople? The reality is it's actually you're your biggest enemy when it comes to your investing. The reason why is because we are all very emotionally influenced by the market. And anyone who is able to weather that storm, right, who is able to get through a period of discomfort, right? If you see the value of your investments dropping, your natural tendency is to sell, right? Because you want to stop the pain. We're kind of simple creatures in that we're kind of pain pleasure creatures, right? We avoid pain and gain pleasure. And even though obviously we're much more advanced than that, at a gut level, that's how we respond to things very frequently. And unfortunately, investing is one of them, right? And so there's a tendency for many to get out there and say, you know what, I'm going to sell my investments. I'm going to get out. I'm going to stop the pain. Whereas in reality, you want to be doing the opposite. You actually want to be buying more. It's counterintuitive, but if you're able to maintain that personal emotional stability going through the difficult times, right? Day in and day out, you're still saving, you're still investing. Doesn't matter what's going on in the external world. You're doing the same. That's going to be like rocket fuel for financial success for you, because it's going to absolutely propel you, because you're going to be doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing, and you're going to be doing it when it really counts the most. So with that in mind, I know we spent a good deal of time on this slide, but I think these are the most important principles to understand when it comes to personal finance, to goal setting, and to achieving your goals. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a little bit of a case study. What do you think? Do you think that it's required to have a large income? I know we said a large income is helpful, but do you think it's required to have a large income in order to be financially successful? I would just ask you to think about that for a minute, because the answer is actually no, it's not. In fact, I will give you an example after we're talking about this Major General Smith. I'm going to give you an example of someone who's very successful. Now, the first case study I want to talk about is Major General Smith. He was a real person. His name wasn't Smith. It's used to, hide his identity. And this is in the public domain, so it is, searchable information. But he was a general from the 1940s, 1950s into the 1980s. Now, it was a while ago, right? So the numbers here may not necessarily sound as big a deal as they would be today, but we're going to adjust them for inflation at the end. But he was a very successful Army officer. And over a period of time, starting in the 1950s, his debt started to mount. And a lot of this was due to his lifestyle, right? And by the late 1970s, 3 or more bank loans for educational purposes were listed at a total of $31,000. Now, back then, that was a lot more money than it is today. And then by the early 1980s, he had a total debt of almost $200,000, which in today's money is actually more than what I have listed now. Right now, I've listed about 500 grand, but it's closer to 600 to 700 grand adjusted for inflation, which was 3 times the couple's annual income, right? It was owed to 17 creditors in 8 states from Texas to Maine. And so you have to ask yourself, this general who was earning, 6 figures, that was a lot of money in the 1980s. It's a lot of money. If he was earning 6 figures and he was already $200,000 in debt, how did that happen? And the answer is that our behavior is far, far more important than our income is. I'm not saying income isn't important. It is important. But your behavior is far more important. and your habits, like I referred to earlier, are far more important than the actual amount of money you make. In some cases, a high income can actually be detrimental to you because it can lull you into a state of complacency where you think you have more money than you really do, as was in this general's case. I actually have a personal client who was happy with me sharing this about him, even though I'm not going to disclose his identity. But he has amassed close to $500,000 in investments over about an 8-year period on less than $30,000 a year, right? And I know many of you may be thinking, oh my gosh, how is that possible? Well, he's very disciplined. He knows what he wants. He's focused on his goals, and he's just been saving and investing diligently. And he's put his money in some, very smart investments, which I have helped him with. And he has grown his wealth now to a point where he could probably stop working if he wanted to, at least temporarily. And that there is a good example, a good contrast between you do not need a high income in order to be financially successful. It certainly isn't going to hurt you. If you're disciplined and you have a high income, we'll get you there fast. But having a high income is not a prerequisite, can be a detriment, and is not nearly as important as your behavior. Now that we've talked about behavior a little bit, I want to get into, in the pillars of good finances, I want to get into what should your financial goals be. This is, again, kind of a starting question. And this is something that I want to encourage each of you to look at and to examine. What are your goals financially? Many don't even have any. They don't even think about them. I have one acquaintance who says, he just puts his money in an S&P 500 index fund. He says, I just want to see where it ends up. And I guess that's fine. It's better than not having any plan at all. But for those who kind of invest on their own and do it that way, there's sometimes their strategies don't really serve them, right? Because they aren't really saving and investing with intention. What are your financial goals? The first principle that I would say is important in helping you develop a goal is you want it to be inspirational. You want it to be something that you are, that gives you motivation, right? I know that motivation is temporary, it's emotional, but you want something that is motivational to you in the long term and in the short term. You want to set a goal for yourself that you say, hey, at some point in the future, I'd love to be a millionaire. I'd love to have enough money. I didn't have to work anymore if I didn't want to. Not that you wouldn't work anymore, but that you didn't have to. Maybe you would really desire to own your own home. I know today, since I think home prices, the median home price just hit another record in the country, right? So being a homeowner is further and further out of reach for more and more people. But maybe making that a goal today could be something that's inspirational in a particular area. Or maybe you want to give to a charity. I know that for me personally, contributing to causes, particularly to veteran causes, is very motivational to me because I know that I'm helping people who really are working hard at trying to make their lives better, make the lives of their families better, and help their communities. And so that is a very rewarding thing for me personally. What is it that's inspirational to you? And I would challenge you to think about that. What's inspirational to you? The second is that we want to make the goal realistic. Okay, so you don't want to set, it is a good idea to set an inspirational goal, but you don't want to set the goal as a single goal that's so deep and so far away that it seems virtually impossible to get there, right? If you said, hey, I don't have any money right now, I have zero net worth, I'm just breaking even, and I want to be a millionaire in a year. It's like, okay, is that realistic? Probably not. 10 years? 5 years? Maybe that's more realistic. But you want to set a goal that's realistic for yourself so that it is motivational and it keeps you in the fight. When you talk about a realistic goal too, you want to set simple goals for yourself that are small and clear. And by that, we're saying you not just want to set the long-term goals, you also want to set the short-term ones. And you want to reward yourself for those, either personally, with your family, emotionally, mentally. You want to reward yourself from achieving those goals when you do achieve them, right? If you are setting yourself, hey, I want to be a millionaire in 10 years. Well, how much do you need to save this year? How much do you need to save and invest? How much do you need to save and invest this month? Maybe you need to save $1,500 this month. That's your goal. Can you do that? And if you do, you can say, hey, we've achieved our goal for this month, on our way to that 10-year goal, and give yourself a small reward for that. Setting goals that are, simple, small, and clear, and that are leading us to a goal, long-term goal that is both realistic and inspirational, is going to be a key pillar in supporting you and keeping you on track. Now, when I was in the service, what I would do with my Marines sometimes is I would kind of call attention to what they would spend their money on. And this is kind of figuring out where the rubber meets the road, right? It's helping them put a budget together. If they have an income, but they haven't really put a budget together, I would help them figure out where they spent their money, because that's the first step. If you don't have a budget, you want to track your spending. Figure out, hey, where are you spending your money right now? Even if it's on a checking account statement or credit card statement, if you can track your spending, that's going to give you a good idea so that you can put a bare bones budget together and get an idea of where you are spending your money so that you can plan from there. And what I would do is sometimes I would focus on, hey, what do they spend their money on that, maybe they could do without? And one of the examples was a lot of them love to drink Mountain Dew. And so I said, hey, how much does a bottle of Mountain Dew cost you? So if you buy, you buy them in bulk, you could get one for 75 cents. But if you buy one at the 7-Eleven, individually, it's probably going to be a little bit more. They also like to use chewing tobacco. And we figured that the cost of a can of Copenhagen was about $3. So if you bought 2 per week, that was about $6 per week. So we figured that if you were drinking at least 1 Mountain Dew per workday and you got 2 cans of chewing tobacco per week, that'd be about $11 per week, $44 to $50 a month, about $572 to $600 per year, right? Spending money, basically, putting this poison in your body. Sorry if I'm offending anybody who's likes to drink Mountain Dew or snuff. But basically I was saying, hey, look, you're putting poison in your body and you're spending money doing it. If we saved that same amount of money, like if you just save $50 a month and you start when you're 22, I realize maybe not all of us in the audience here are 22, but you can interpolate from my math here. If you started when you're 22, by the time you were 68, even if you just took your money and you put it in like your mattress, it would be $424,000. If you doubled that, right, you saved $100 a month, and you were to invest that, say you invest that just in a standard S&P 500 index fund, you'd have $1 million by the time you're 68. $1 million. And if you think about that, the magic of compounding, even if you can just get a little bit of savings out there, if you've got time on your side, if you have time, the magic of compounding is going to be able to generate wealth for you and help you achieve your financial goals far faster than you can do it on your own, right? Earning your way there is not going to get you there as quickly as earning and investing your way there. So when it comes to budgeting, what I would recommend, if you don't already have a budget, try to really cover down on the broad essentials. Identify where your spending is. See if you can assign money to every part of your budget, right? So if something isn't being spent, if you have more money, say, hey, this is going into savings, or this is going to some purpose. And then once you've tracked that, you can, use a pencil, paper, if that's the easiest way to do it for you. I don't want this to cost you a lot of time, but get an idea, each month of where that money is being spent to give you an idea of how much you can save, right? And where you can find the easy wins in your budget. There are places that you can go in your budget and find savings that is not going to dramatically impact your lifestyle, right? You can get a competing quote on your cell phone bill, on your car insurance, on your renter's insurance. You can shop at the commissary vice going to Harris Teeter or Whole Foods. You can, buy stuff at a flea market. You can thrift. you can find ways to save money in your budget, at least temporarily, that is going to help you generate a little bit more savings. There are ways to do this too. Again, I was saying pencil and paper because usually that's the easiest way to do it. But I personally have a budgeting spreadsheet. I use it every month, and I'm happy to share it with you. So we'll get to the end of this presentation. You'll have my contact info if you want to reach out. I'll share that with you. But there are also apps right now. There are free apps. Mint.com used to be an app that was used for budgeting. It's not in existence anymore, so far as I know. I think it ceased to be available maybe a year or two back. But I know that there's another free app at empower.com that you can use in order to achieve your goals, in order to get better at at really identifying where you're spending your money. Because the other thing too is when you're doing it over several months, you're able to identify the one-off stuff too. Hey, you don't need to spend money on car maintenance every month, but maybe every 3 months, 4 months, something breaks. Okay, we're going to spread that out over the months. We're going to budget for it so that we're able to get a good idea of how much we need to save when those surprise, or I shouldn't say surprise, more non-routine expenses rear their ugly head. So based on this, we're going to determine how much we can save in order to pay off debt or to invest, right? And now what I want to do is, I know that there have been some questions. Let's see here. What I'll do is I will answer these questions at the end. And I have them written down here. So just so you guys know, I won't answer them now. I'll answer them at the end. So if you want me to answer your question, just stick around to the end and I'll make sure that I tackle it. The next topic is, oh, and by the way, they did have one comment in here. Rocket Money is a good app. Yeah, thank you very much, Itorili, for sharing that. Rocket Money is a good app for tracking spending as well. What I want to do too is I want to talk a little bit about debt reduction and good credit. Okay, so when it comes to our financial goals, our saving is not just necessarily to build wealth for the future. It could also be used to pay down debt. And I would say, as a rule of thumb, and again, remember, this is not personalized financial advice for you, the viewer. This is general education. For your personal situation, make sure to talk to a professional about this. I can talk to you about this, but you want to make sure that you're getting your own personal information in the calculus of making a decision when it comes to this. A lot of this stuff is just general education. And one of those things is that identifying what debt to pay off and what debt not to pay off, I think is important. So once you've got your budget in line and you're saving and you're able to pay down debt, if you have substantial personal consumer debt, I would encourage you to make it a priority to pay it off. Now, again, I don't know your situation, but I would say if you've got credit card debt that's got like 20% APR interest that you're paying, they're only requiring you to pay the minimum payment, but they're really squeezing you when it comes to interest, I would encourage you to pay those debts off sooner rather than later because they're burning a hole in your pocket. If you have a plan where you're like, hey, I want to put these on hold for a while, I get it. But I would encourage you to also come up with a plan to pay it off. And there are multiple different ways of doing that. There's the debt snowball, there's the debt avalanche, there's the money mission debt reduction plan that I advocate myself. But there are different ways that you can do this. I would still make it a priority to pay it off. Debt is not a requirement for good credit. You can, believe it or not, build a credit report for yourself by doing some simple steps. Here, I will give you an example. You can apply for a credit card. You can use that credit card to say, pay your utility bill or pay a minor bill, pay the card off, do that for a few months and you will have a credit report. And it can be a very good one too, right? It doesn't have to be massive amounts of debt, mortgage debt, student loan debt, credit card debt. It's not required to build a credit score. You can build a credit score by having a little bit of a loan. But again, this is something that you would pay for anyway. I'm not encouraging you to go out and apply for credit cards if you have a spending problem. I'm not encouraging that. What I'm saying is if you are disciplined with your spending and you want to build credit, you don't want to have debt. And since you don't have debt, that's probably a good indication you are disciplined with your spending. Then I would recommend that you get a credit card. if you don't already have one, pay a predictable bill and only that bill with it over a couple of months, maybe a few months. Pay it off every month so you're not paying any interest charges, no finance charges. And, at a certain point in the future, you could even close the account if you want to, but you will build a credit report for yourself doing something as simple as that. Now, even though I'm encouraging you to get out of debt, I do want to caveat this by saying not all debt is bad. Okay? Let me repeat that. Not all debt is bad. Okay? Debt is a tool. And it's a tool that can be used and it can be abused. Unfortunately, in our consumeristic society today, debt is something that is abused by many people. And it's done, that happens because businesses are very good at marketing to us, digging into our pain, figuring out our pain points, giving us what they propose as a solution for us, selling us on something, and really talking us into spending money for the here and now. And in reality, a lot of this stuff we don't really need. And so as a result of that, a lot of people are in debt, but they're not really there because they intend to be there. They're there really more by happenstance than a bad string of bad luck. Now they got some bad habits, and they find it very difficult to get themselves out of debt. So consumer debt is bad, but debt itself is not bad. There are going to be financial influencers who are going to tell you that all debt is bad, never have any debt. I understand. If you don't want to have debt, it's okay. Like, that's fine. Again, I'm not saying you need to have debt, right? I'm not saying that you should have debt. But what I am saying is that it is not evil per se. It is a tool. And it is a tool that can be used to increase your wealth if done so intelligently, right? Most Fortune 500 companies carry some debt to increase their wealth. Like, if you went in, you told them, hey, why don't, AT&T or IBM, hey, why don't you pay all your debt off? They'd be like, you're crazy. Why would we do that? We're able to leverage that and generate greater business and greater profit because we're using it intelligently. You can do the same. If you want to buy a business, if you want to increase the income that you have coming to you, or you want to increase your income security, like I was talking about earlier, and you want to buy, a business, or you want to buy a piece of property and turn it into a rental business, or if you want to, invest in yourself with some student loans, invest in your education. All debt is not necessarily bad. If it is used to increase our capabilities, to increase our wealth, it can be a very good thing. It can also increase our financial resiliency. If we have, say, a line of credit available that we can draw from in an emergency that maybe our emergency fund wouldn't cover, that can give us financial resiliency instead of having property repossessed because we can't make a payment. So remember that it is a tool, and you're just not to abuse that tool, right? Use it intelligently, and it can actually accelerate your success. Now that, we've talked about the budgeting, the debt reduction, income, how do you save and invest, right? Once you have the money, once you have that routine of saving regularly, how do you save in order to achieve your financial goals? Now, there are a couple things that I put up here, right? I mentioned diversification, exchange traded funds, mutual funds, investing apps. All of these are very important, okay? Obviously, diversification is a very important point when it comes to investing, because diversification is spreading your money across, different asset classes so as to be in a position that you're going to achieve your goal with a minimum amount of risk. Example I used before, say if I'm saving for a house in a year and I can save that money in a year, I'm just going to stick it in the savings account. I'm not going to put it in the stock market. Why? The stock market may be higher at the end of the year. Statistically, it will be, but it might not be. There's a chance it'll go down. And if it does, I could actually have my investments be worth less and not have the money to make the down payment on my house in a year than if I just stuck it in the savings account. So diversification is important because you're spreading your assets in many asset classes. You're spending your money in many asset classes in a way to reduce the amount of risk that you're taking in achieving your financial goals. Warren Buffett likes to say, diversification is insurance against your own ignorance. And again, he's not trying to imply everybody else is ignorant and he's smart. Although he is brilliant, what he's saying is that none of us know what's going to happen in the future. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can, accurately predict exactly what's going to happen. It's all a matter of probabilities. And based on that, you want to measure those probabilities compared to, how soon you need to reach your goals. Exchange traded funds are usually today one of the best ways to do that because they are easy to buy and sell. They're very liquid and they can align you with where you want your risk tolerance to be. I mentioned mutual funds because I still own some. I'm an older guy. And so I remember the time before ETFs existed and we all invested in mutual funds. They work too. The difference between mutual funds and ETFs is that ETFs tend to be a little less expensive. And then also ETFs are more liquid, right? You can buy and sell them during a trading day, much like a stock. Whereas a mutual fund usually, not always, but usually sells at the end of the closing day. And so as a result of that, there's a little bit less flexibility with them. But in some cases, at least the older ones, they may be invested in areas that modern day ETFs don't touch anymore. So look at them, understand what they're invested in before you make a decision. Make sure you're talking to a financial counselor, a financial advisor, a professional in the area before you make a decision to invest. Robinhood and Stash are examples of apps. I know Acorn's another one. Apps are nice because they're convenient, they're easy to get to. I know Robinhood several years ago was a real market disruptor in that they started the whole free trades, which then all the online brokerages, basically all the big name brokerages had to compete with. So they all had to make them free too. And so as a result of that, there's been a lot of market disruption. I know there's more that's coming with AI. There are robo-advisors. There are many, many different ways to do this. But I would say the best idea is to find something that's simple, that's executable, and that's something that you're going to do on a regular basis. Because if you make it too complicated, then you're just going to get overwhelmed and want to give up. And I think that's probably one of the most important things when it comes to your plan. Now, matching money is free money. So what I would say is when it comes to prioritizing where you save and invest, I would always encourage you to, if you can, try to capture as much of a match as possible from your employer, from the military, from whoever you're employed with, because matching money is free money. And if you're able to capture that first, that can help you a lot, right? Make that a priority to get that if you can. I wouldn't necessarily make it a priority over paying off debt, right? If you feel that you can pay the debt off faster, especially if it's like very high interest debt. I'm talking like 20 plus interest rate, 20+% interest rate on a credit card. Yeah, maybe you want to focus on paying that down first. But if you have lower interest rate debt, maybe try to capture that match first before you pay the rest of your debt off that you want to pay off. And you start putting money in other tax advantaged accounts, if you will. The other thing too, I would say is it's really not a bad idea to get a financial advisor. And that person, it doesn't even necessarily need to be somebody you pay. Now, I personally believe that if you hire one, it is going to be well worth the money to you and you will see that long term. However, even if you don't want to, or you can't afford it, or you don't think you can afford it, at least find someone that is a little bit smarter at money than you are, right? A little bit better at it, and have them as somebody in your corner, a sounding board. It's nice to have someone in your corner that has that capability or has, an objective view of what it is that you're doing so that they can help make sure that you steer the ship properly. You're not making an emotional decision, because that's going to help you with that whole personal emotional stability, that whole issue, if you will. So what I want to do before I get to the questions, I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about an overview of what we talked about. I know I don't want to go much longer than an hour here in out of respect to Ryan, but I want to talk about your questions. So I'm going to give us like maybe about 15 minutes for questions. But we talked today about the fundamentals of good finances, right? The fundamental pillars, goal setting, and what are the principles to good goal setting and goals that you should set for yourself, identifying what those are, right? And then formulating a plan to get there. Your budget, ways that you can track your spending in order to help formulate a budget for yourself, debt reduction and building good credit, and then saving and investing. Now, if you want to get a hold of me, right, you can follow my work at our website, which is patrickweinert.com. We have free video interviews. I do interviews with experts regularly. We have a library of video interviews in there. I post articles regularly in there to help you with your finances. All this stuff is free. Please go on there at any time, take a look. If you have questions on anything, you're welcome to also join our Facebook group. You're also, welcome to contact me directly. And if you have any questions about any of this stuff, I can help you out, point you in the right direction, particularly for those that are veterans that are interested in starting businesses. I think I can help you with that. And so, what I want to do is now take your questions. And I know that we had a number of questions here that came through. Let's see if there's a way I can view all of them. So it says, what are your thoughts on using, let's see here, credit? What are your thoughts on using credit card and paying off with every paycheck? Okay, I see what you're saying. What are your thoughts? This is from Irma. What are your thoughts on using a credit card, but then making sure you pay it off with every paycheck? I think that can be very good. Again, this isn't like personal investment advice necessarily for Irma, but as a general rule, I think that if you are able to use a credit card and you pay it off every statement balance is paid off completely, you're going to be able to, you don't accrue any finance charges, and you're able to capture points from that, right? Sometimes it's cash back, sometimes it's travel bonuses. You get access to free lounges at airports. There's lots of perks that credit cards will give you. Another thing that I will do, again, this is only for people that are disciplined with their money. I only recommend it for people that are disciplined with their money, but you can also get credit card cash bonuses, right? You apply for a card, spend the $500, get the $200, pay it off, close the account, and you're done. You just got a free $200, right? Put that in your emergency fund or put that in your investments. So those are ways you can do that. Again, people should only do that if they're disciplined with their spending. They shouldn't just do that randomly, because if you have difficulty with your spending, it could be a problem. Okay, Ryan says, even for someone who is financially responsible, would you ever advise adding a child to your line of credit to help establish them a credit score? I would say it depends on a lot of things. As a general rule, I don't think I would recommend that. As a general rule, I wouldn't recommend it, but there's exceptions to everything. And so if you have a child that, is very responsible with their money and you want to add them to your line of credit, you're giving them access to your credit for something that's very clearly defined. They really have not, gone outside that at all. Then yeah, that could be an option for them to build their credit. What I would say might be better would be to set up, if they're old enough, set up their own bank account, to set up their own credit card, and then show them how to do it, right? Show them how to use it responsibly. I think I had my first credit card when I was 19, I think. At least I applied for one. But that might be a good idea, is to get them in the process of kind of going through all the motions themselves first, because that's going to be the best training they can get, right? If I know that sometimes we as parents want to kind of do stuff for them, and it is important that we are there to support them. But I think if you kind of give them a right and left lateral limit a little bit, where they can kind of fail small, they can learn, that is going to help them learn a lot faster. And then you tell them what your intent is for them. I hope that answered your question. Ryan, how much cash should a business keep in savings? So this is it's a good question, Ryan. And again, not an answer to you individually, but I would say it depends. It depends on the type of business. If you are a business that does income, the revenue is generated pretty regularly, maybe that amount of cash you need to have in savings is smaller. If you're one that's more seasonal, then maybe you would need to have a larger amount put away, right? Because you need a larger cash reserve to make it through the lean times and get back to the good times. I would say a lot of it depends on what that business is, right? If you are a business that is a rental property and you have a very reliable tenant in there, they're paying you rent in, day out. You got maintenance come up. You might have to put 5-10% away each month for maintenance, in preparation for that when things pop up. Whereas if you have a more seasonal business, right? Like if you have an agricultural business where you are selling your harvest in one season and then not in another, you might have to save a lot more. So I know it's kind of a vague answer, but it's very dependent on what that business is. Jasmine, in general, if you have built multiple streams and do not get the best return, what suggestions would you give in general? So if you have multiple streams and you don't, let me see if I can open this up a little bit more, and do not get the best return, what suggestions would you give? I'm not entirely sure. I guess I would say it depends on what you mean by you didn't get the best return. Best return based on the market, best return based on your own opinion, best return based on what you want. It's a little bit difficult to answer that because I would need to know more about your situation to give you an answer. I would just say, if you want to get a higher return than what you're currently invested in, just have to understand that you could invest in other businesses, right? Like ETFs. But the problem is that there's risk involved with that. And so you need to weigh that risk versus the return. I hope that answered your question. eToro says, is there a way to invest your business profits, or how to use something with interest for your profits you are saving in the business? There is a way to invest business profits. If you are, I'm assuming you're saying in reference to being like a small business owner, you can set up a retirement plan for yourself. This is an example of a way to invest business profits. You can set up a retirement plan for yourself that, and for a lot of small companies, is called a simplified employee pension. Again, I'm not a tax expert, and I don't play one on TV. So you would want to talk to a tax expert before doing this, but you can set up a simplified employee pension, and that enables you to contribute money to it, either tax deductible or like a Roth, in a way so that you can grow your wealth that you've received at least a portion of it as a result of your business work. That's an example. Ryan has a question. I have both traditional Roth retirements. Do you think it would be advisable to convert my traditional into Roth? I'm still at least 30 years out from touching any of this money. Ryan, again, not personal investment advice for you, but I would say that it could be a good idea to convert your traditional into a Roth. But what I would recommend is that you talk to a tax professional before you do it, because you want to make sure you're understanding the tax implications of doing that. If you've had it for a long time, right? If you have that money in the traditional for a while and you're converting all of it in a given year, that could increase your tax bill that year a lot. So you might want to split it up over a few years, or take it in years where your income isn't as high. That could be beneficial. The other thing too you want to look at is what most likely is tax bracket are you going to be in when you're in retirement? Because how much of a tax bracket you're in now compared to how much you're going to be in the future may dictate whether or not you'd want your money in a traditional or Roth, right? Ryan says, what financial risks keep you up at night? That's a good question. I would say, the big thing for me, so for those of you that don't know, I did talk a little bit about my background. I'm a investment advisor, right? I help people with their money, but I also am a real estate investor too, right? So I have other businesses where I invest in property. And when I do, I usually invest in properties that I know have some ability to appreciate in value, right? There's some value add that I can bring to that situation. I would say some of the challenges for me sometimes are understanding deals that are, a little bit more complicated, because as I continue to grow, those when I push outside my own personal comfort zone, those kind of have me planning and double and triple checking things. But for each of you, something I can pass on to you is that one of the great things that you can do too is as you grow in your investing experience and your personal finances, you're going to get more comfortable with stuff in the past that used to be uncomfortable, right? Buying during an economic downturn is going to be easier for you now. And so I guess one of the things that Ryan brought up is, we all have it. We're all growing. I'm learning every day. I learn new stuff about investing every day, about business, and pushing outside of your comfort zone. You're always going to be in a place where it's a little bit, uncomfortable. That's the whole point of it. And that's how we grow. So see, did somebody else have a question? I think we're close to time here, right? Close to an hour. But well, in any case, hey, it's been a real pleasure being here with all of you. And Ryan, thanks for having me.
Amazing. I really appreciate you coming on. You dropped some nuclear value today, Patrick. And I'm reading the comments. I'm just amazed. And thank you very much. We're looking forward to having you back. I think
I'd
you're
love to be
coming back. Are you coming back next month? Is that our deal?
That's our deal right now.
Okay,
I can answer,
beautiful.
more advanced questions too for people who want to visit us again.
Yeah, for sure. Make sure in the link or in the comments section, we have Patrick's group, we have his LinkedIn, his website is obviously scrolling above us right now. So definitely connect with him. He has a wealth of information. So definitely reach out to him. Patrick, thanks for joining us here on Veteran Social, and you are welcome anytime for sure. Thank you.
Pleasure being here, Ryan. Thank you.
Man, he just dropped the nuclear bombs of value on us. So again, really appreciate Patrick for joining us here. Thank you for joining Veteran Social, and we are looking forward to continuing to bring some amazing people up front and bringing some knowledge out to the veteran community. And tomorrow we have a class, and I'm a little biased. This kid is actually my cousin. He is a veteran. I'm sorry, he's my nephew. He is an Army veteran based out of Las Vegas, and he is going to bring us an AI 101 class tomorrow, and that's with Kenneth Hunt. And tune in, same time, same channel. What do they say? Same bat time, same bat channel. And until then, we really appreciate it. And make sure you check out veteransocial.org. And that's it. Peace out. Be safe.